Hello, fellow ink drinkers, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two sisters who love to read and love books. And so we decided to make this podcast in order to talk about different sorts of bookish content, whether that be bad retellings of stories, book reviews, any sort of buddy reads that we do, maybe even some book theories, and a whole wide variety of topics are also going to be covered in here as well. But today we are actually going over and doing our buddy read of one of Belle's favorite books, which is called Stalking Jack the Ripper, and it is by Carrie Maniscalco. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Maniscalco. That's what we're going to go with. And if that is wrong, I am so sorry. I am...
That's why I gave it to you to say, because there's no way I can say it.
Yes, I am so sorry if I said that wrong. I do apologize. I am just not good at pronunciation or words 9 times out of 10. But before we go into the nitty-gritty of what we kind of noticed during our buddy read, or what I noticed, because Belle has read this book multiple times. And it was really just my first time reading it. We are going to go over kind of our overall thoughts of what we thought when we first read the book, or when I first read the book, and in Belle's, all of her subsequent rereads of the book.
Yes.
So, Belle, what are your general thoughts about this book?
Other than it's a masterpiece and everybody should read it.
Yes, other than that.
I just love this book so much. I'm going to sound really, really weird here, but Aria can attest. I absolutely love the Victorian era, and I have a weird fascination with true crime and murder, and especially the Whitechapel murders and Jack the Ripper. It was always something that has intrigued me.
Yeah. Out of the two of us, you are the one who is the most interested in true crime types of content.
Which is actually really weird, because growing up, I was scared of everything. And Aria was not so much of a scaredy cat. And now that we're older, Aria is afraid of her own shadow, and I fall asleep to true crime episodes.
Yeah, this is very accurate. Which is kind of weird how that happened. I don't know how that happened or why that happened, but that is...
Okay, but in my defense, I was only scared of, like, the basilisk from the Harry Potter movie.
You were scared of
like
more...
the fantasy things.
Right. You were scared of more, like, fantasy monsters, which I never was. That's, I mean, again, though, I am a big fantasy person, so...
I am not.
For me, it was something that I always found fascinating. For me, I think once it gets into real life situations and there isn't that fictional aspect to it, I think that's what starts to really freak me out, more so than just there's this big huge snake. Or she was also freaked out by Gollum from the Lord of the Rings movies.
My gosh, what little kid isn't? I'm sorry. Like, if you're a little kid and you're not freaked out by Gollum, you need help. As a child, that thing is freaky.
Yeah. In her defense, his design, which I will admit, you can take my fantasy lover card away at the door if you need to, but I did not read any of the Tolkien work myself. I did try to read The Hobbit once, and I just couldn't get into it. So for me, I'm just not a fan, but I did like the movies as a kid. That was kind of a thing that me and my aunt, when she would come in for visiting and that sort of thing, when those movies first came out, she would bring a copy home with her and we would watch it together, and that was kind of our thing. So for me,
I'd cry and get yelled at.
Right. Yeah. I have a lot more, I want to say, nostalgia for the movies more so than the books. And I feel like for some works of art, if that's the way it is, that's okay. But regardless, sorry for this the side tangent there. So In general, though, you love Stalking Jack the Ripper.
I do. I love the whole series, except for the third book.
Right, which I will say, okay, for my general thoughts as a first-time person going into this book, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, which I was a little bit surprised by. But that being said, will I go through and read any other books of the series? Probably not.
Honestly, I think the second book will actually freak you out. You'd probably like the third one because it is escaping from Houdini, and you do like Houdini, whereas I do not.
For me, I think that I liked how this first book went, and we'll get into more kind of my first time thoughts about when I went through this book, kind of what stood out to me, because Belle actually hasn't even heard any of my first time thoughts. We were saving it all for you guys.
Okay. So, yeah, this is my first time hearing her thoughts. So if you hear me dying in the background, just ignore it.
But regardless, so the first thing that stood out to me when I was reading this is that Thomas Cresswell, which is kind of the main character, well, not the main character.
No, he's not the main character. He is the male lead.
Yes,
get it
thank you.
right.
Thank you. No, I'm so sorry. My brain could not form the words male lead. I couldn't get that through my head. But regardless, the male lead, or he's even, I would say, like the love interest of this book, his name is Thomas Cresswell. And for me, when I was kind of first going through this, he really did seem to me to be a Sherlock Holmes stand-in, because he does talk a lot about deductions. And for me, I am a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes retellings, that kind of thing. So I enjoyed that thoroughly. The other thing that I noticed about him is that he is very smooth when it comes to his relationship with
Audrey Rose Wadsworth.
Yes, Audrey Rose. I knew it started with an A, and for a second my mind blanked, and I was like,
let me just tell you, it's such a beautiful name. Like, anybody who wants to argue that it is not a beautiful name, please comment, and I will gladly argue how beautiful the name Audrey Rose is.
Yes, I thought it was very pretty. I thought it flowed very well, and it was kind of nice to, I don't know, listen to, because I did listen to the audiobook version of this book. There are some books for me that it is a lot easier to get through or to read when it is in audiobook form. There are other books that I would prefer to only read those. So it really is a balancing act when trying to decide whether to read between the audiobook or the hard copy. But regardless. So then the next thoughts that I had about this book, and my note is 6 hours left and I'm enjoying the book so far. I'm not a fan of how she keeps repeating that she doesn't like Thomas, but she does like him. Like, I could tell from the beginning that she did like him.
Okay. Pause. Just no. The whole thing between the beginning of Audrey Rose and Thomas is set in the Victorian era, where higher class women such as Audrey Rose were expected to just find a husband and be the perfect little female wife, when Audrey Rose has a thing for science and she loves her uncle, who is very much a scientist and helped the police with murder cases and that type of thing. So she doesn't like Thomas as the fact that he challenged her to think, are you sure this is what you want to do? He admired her and everything, but at the start she was kind of like, don't mess this up for me.
Which I get that, but at the same time, for me, and I think too, because isn't this book considered to be like YA?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of times for me, and this is why personally I've been trying to get away from reading a lot of YA books, is because I already kind of know where it's going, right? And that doesn't just stem from Belle telling me like little bits and pieces about what's happening, but like I could already tell just from the way that it was going that, she was going to kind of fall for him. He was going to fall for her. They would hopefully eventually get married, of course, unless in a future book, another love interest comes in or something like that, because that can happen. But for me, I could already tell that was going to be a thing. And I could tell, like, even in the era, that once she were to decide to marry him, that essentially he wasn't going to stop her from doing what she wanted to do. That's just how I interpreted it all as I went through kind of this first book. So then the next thought that I had about it, but I do like how she can be very calculating in using like the ladies' way of doing things. And then if the ladies' way doesn't really work out for her, she kind of puts her own spin on what like a lady should do, kind of in her opinion, which I did enjoy that. And in that case, I'm thinking of the scene with the sea captain, how she kind of threatens him. For me, I kind of was like, you go, girl, like you got this.
Yep.
So the next note I have is that after talking to Belle a little bit, I was able to guess the identity of who Jack the Ripper was.
Oh my gosh,
book.
no. You questioned it and I said, no, that's not it. And you kept questioning it until you got who it is. And then I was just like,
But I got it, though.
Yeah,
I got it in
your
2.
Fifth guess.
No, I got it in 2. The next thought, this book is definitely made to be reread with the knowledge of who the Ripper is, because there are a lot of clues in there.
I kind of pointed out some clues to her, and I'm like, pay attention, because, again, my 3rd time rereading this book, still love it. It's great. I was kind of just like, oh, pay attention to this. This is important to the storyline. And, like, as I keep rereading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. And, things jump out at you. So I was kind of just like, because I was so excited, I kept being like, Arya, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. And I gave a lot away. Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, there were certain things that the way that it was written, my reader sense or my spidey sense, as I call it, my reader sense, started to kind of tingle a little bit. So I had a feeling, but it wasn't until I talked to her that it really came together for me. Like I said, got it into, so proud of me. The next thing that I said is that the Ripper experiments really did creep me out. That is the one part of the book that...
You break my heart.
I got through it, but it was getting towards the end, and in the book, so spoiler warning ahead, but Audrey Rose kind of finds the lair of the Ripper. And what she finds there is it's not super graphic in detail, but at the same time, the thought of it is just kind of creepy, and it kind of gets under your skin a little bit.
What are you talking about? No, it doesn't. You wimp.
Yeah, I'm a wimp. But I don't care, because also just kind of the thought process of some of it, just, I don't know, it just really messed with my head a little bit, I will say.
It's just Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's Frankenstein, but worse.
Okay, let's be real here, though. We're so lucky that I don't understand science, because I would totally be a mad scientist.
You would indeed. But then the last 2 thoughts that I had when I was finishing up with the book is that I love Thomas. And that I love how at the end her dad comes around to letting her do what she wants to do. That to me, like kind of after going through everything that happens with the Ripper, that just kind of gave me all the warm and fuzzies, and I was very happy about that. That was a very fun read, I think, for me. I did enjoy it.
Oh, I wish you read the series. So, spoiler alert, the Ripper in the first book is not the actual Ripper of the series. You find out later that the Ripper, they get a hold of his journals, and in his journals he kind of writes, I am guilty of many sins, but murder isn't one.
Okay, yeah, I feel like there's definitely more to it than what I know, but I'm going by what I know, which is...
Yes, what you know, which is just the first book, which is upsetting because...
Yeah, there's more. I get it.
The whole I'm guilty of many sins, but murder isn't one. And then the last book includes H.H. Holmes, and... if nobody knows the case of H.H. Holmes, just the inside the mind of that man.
And H.H. Holmes is one case that I do want to just look into the real life case of that versus, a fictional case. But that's going to be later on down the line, and that's going to be something that I do on my own, purely on my own. Well, it looks like we're slowly kind of winding down our time for today's episode. We do want to thank you for kind of coming along as we talked about Stalking Jack the Ripper. Again, one of Belle's favorite books. One book that I did surprisingly enjoy. I wouldn't continue with the series, but I enjoyed the book overall. At the end of the day, definitely do recommend, reading at least the first book of this series if you are interested in mystery or if you're interested in story set in the Victorian era.
Oh, another thing that I love about this book, and shout out to the author for using actual facts about the Ripper case.
Yes, there is some kind of overlap into the real world kind of thing for this case.
It's not an overlap. She actually uses the facts of the case.
Yes.
It's great.
Anyway, and before we go, of course, if you liked this episode, if you have been enjoying our content, leave a like, leave a review, share it with your friends, especially if they like bookish content, or share it with them even if they don't like bookish content. Maybe they'll like listening to us laugh at each other. And next time, we are going to be going over
another book theory on whether or not Wonderland is real.
Excellent. Well, we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.